Dorian Finney-Smith, maybe the best defender in the NBA? Maybe. I'm doing a series where I spread propaganda for every single player on the Dallas Mavericks roster, and with ESPN dropping their top 100 player rankings, I figured now was time to talk about Dorian Finney-Smith because they, for some reason, inexplicably, decided to leave Dorian Finney-Smith off the top 100 players list, unless he's in the top 10, which is possible. Listen, before you even get on your soapbox, okay, I understand that rankings do not matter, especially from ESPN and old media, and I also don't care about rankings from new media either. I'm gonna be honest with you. I've listened to the Draymond Green podcast before. I think it's horrific. I think it's really, really terrible. I think it's time for new media to take over, with me leading the charge. No, for real though, there's no real reason to get worked up over ESPN rankings, but I mean, it's the middle of September. What else do you expect us to do? What else do you expect us to talk about? You expect us to work? You expect us to focus on our jobs? Huh? I would rather myself. You know what we could be doing instead? Subscribing to the channel. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. If you have not subscribed to the channel yet, make sure you do so. It goes a long way. Like the video, leave a comment. It lets YouTube know, hey, you know what? This guy knows what he's talking about. Also, we stream every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. You don't want to miss it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, okay? Listen, I'm going to start with what I guess you could classify a hot take here to set the tone for the video. Dorian Finney-Smith being snubbed from the All-NBA defensive team last year was a complete and total travesty. It was. And I'll take it a step further with another hot take that I really didn't think was that hot, but the NBA Twitter graduates over there on Twitter told me that it was a hot take, and that's Dorian Finney-Smith is the second best player on the Dallas Mavericks, and I feel this pretty comfortably. Like, I feel like it's by a pretty comfortable margin. Obviously, he's not going to put up the numbers offensively that Spencer Dinwiddie or Christian Wood does. I mean, I guess so, right? If he does, Dorian either took the biggest step forward offensively for a player in the history of basketball, or Christian Wood and Spencer Dinwiddie collectively shit their pants. What Dorian Finney-Smith brings to the table defensively, I mean, it's almost impossible to put into words. I know it's a bit of a cop-out, but he's got that dog in him. You have to watch to fully understand what it is Dorian Finney-Smith brings to the table. Now, that doesn't mean I don't have numbers for you, because you know I got numbers for you. Dorian is one of these rare breeds of defenders, the type that defends the best player on the opposing team night in, night out, regardless of the position that player plays. He's one of only 7 guys in the entire NBA this past season to finish in the 95th percentile or better in both defensive matchup difficulty and defensive position versatility. To take it a step further, him and Wesley Matthews are the only 2 players in the entire NBA to finish in the 99th percentile or better in both of those categories, and Dorian both got far more minutes and games played than Wesley Matthews. The Mavericks play the Celtics. All right, well, Dorian Finney-Smith is going to pick up Jason Tatum, who he held to 2 of 11 shooting the last time these two teams played. They play the Lakers. All right, Dorian Finney-Smith is going to be the primary defender on LeBron James. They play the Nets. Well, you know it's going to be Kevin Durant. They play the Grizzlies. He's even going to be the primary defender on a smaller, quicker guard like Ja Morant. He can even check centers from time to time, and the Mavericks utilize that every now and then, going super small with Dorian Finney-Smith being the 5. It's not something you want to do every single possession, obviously, or if the team has a legitimately competent big on their roster, but it's something they can do. He only spent 80 minutes playing small ball 5 this past season, but the Mavs were plus 14 in those minutes. That's good stuff. There was a stretch of games I absolutely loved from Dorian Finney-Smith this past season, right? He had one game against the Milwaukee Bucks where he was tasked with guarding Giannis Antetokounmpo pretty much the entire game, a game that the Dallas Mavericks ended up winning, by the way, right? And this was only a week after he was guarding Donovan Mitchell, a smaller, quicker, more athletic guard, the entire game. It's this defensive versatility that really helps him stand out among a sea of great defenders in the NBA. Speaking of Donovan Mitchell, man, Dorian Finney-Smith had him in prison during the first round. It was... I went back and I looked at the matchup data for this series, and according to my 100% correct calculations, Donovan Mitchell went 17 of 52 when guarded by Dorian Finney-Smith, which is a 31% field goal percentage. He scored 40 points on 52 shots. That's icky. Mitchell's true shooting percentage dropped from 57% in the regular season to 50% in the postseason, due in large part to Dorian Finney-Smith's defense. Now, I know there was a hamstring issue for Mitchell, or at least that's what they're going to tell us, right? In reality, it was a Dorian Finney-Smith issue. Dodo was one of only 4 players in the entire NBA to finish in the 85th percentile or better in perimeter defense, the 95th percentile or better in off-ball chaser defense, and the 85th percentile or better in ball screen navigation. If you're wondering what the fuck these stats are, You're not alone. I'm gonna be real with you. I don't know what they are. But Basketball Index uses these 3 stats to help determine whether or not a player is a good perimeter defender. And Dorian's looking damn good. Now, obviously, you don't need me to say this, but I'm going to anyway. The Mavericks are not a top 7 defense without Dorian, right? That goes without being said. But his versatility, right? His versatility, his ability to switch on to the opposing team's best player, no matter who they are, the ability to check a center if needed, incredibly important in a Jason Kidd-led defense that relies on versatility, that relies on switchability, that relies on pretty much switching everything, which is what the Mavs do. Him signing that 4-year, $52 million contract extension back in February, man, that was huge. That was a huge move for the Mavericks. Not only is that contract going to look like a complete and total steal, especially once the cap spikes here in a couple of years, but man, they would be lost without Dorian. They really would. Like, I know losing Brunson for nothing this offseason really sucks, and the Mavericks are going to feel it, especially if they make another deep run in the playoffs. But there is a world that exists where Dinwiddie kind of steps up and steps into that role that Brunson had last season, and the Mavs make a move at the deadline or something for another semi-competent ball handler, and then we're rolling. If the Mavs lost Dorian for nothing, there's zero replacement. There was nothing on the market for them this offseason to go out and get a guy who can fill in and do what Dorian Finney-Smith does. There would be nobody at the trade deadline who would be able to come in and do what Dorian Finney-Smith does. He's legitimately irreplaceable for this team currently. If he left, I would be ringing the alarms. I would. It would be pure panic time. Offensively, Dorian's growth shooting the basketball, it's really been nothing short of amazing, especially for an undrafted guy who had to carve a role for himself in the NBA. His three-point percentage and volume has gone up every single year he's been in the league, leading to 40% from 3 this past season, if you round up, which we are going to, on 5.5 attempts per game. These are elite 3-and-D shooting numbers. I mean, Dorian is an elite 3-and-D guy. That just is what it is. He's one of the best, if not maybe the best in the NBA. And to make things better, Dorian's 3-point shooting has jumped each of the last 2 postseasons, going from 39% to 43% in 2021, and from 40% to 42% in 2022. And you want to know something crazy? You want to know something insane? Dorian is currently 27th all-time in the history of the National Basketball Association when it comes to 3-point percentage in the playoffs over the course of a career. All-time, 27th. I had a funny exchange when someone on Twitter was like, well, what's the criteria? Did you read the fine print? Did you read the fine print to find out what the criteria for this was? Fuck no, I didn't read the fine print. Are you kidding me? And I'm never gonna. If you show me a stat that says one of my players is in the top 30 all time in something, I'm running with it. I don't give a shit what the stat is. You know, among Mavs fandom, there's been like this ongoing joke that Dorian Finney-Smith has never missed a 3 in front of the opposing team's bench. So I had to go back myself and I had to look. I went through every single 3-pointer Dorian shot in the playoffs, and he went 8 of 14 on corner 3s in front of the opposing team's bench. That's 57%. It's not 100%, but that's pretty fucking good. And you know he talks shit after every single one of those makes. You gotta love it. In fact, Dorian is the most prolific corner 3-point shooter in the NBA, according to Bobby Carella. He's the only player in the NBA this past season to finish in the top 5 in both makes from the right corner and the left corner, shooting 45% from both. Knocked down. And crazy enough, I still think there's room to grow for Dorian offensively. I mean, obviously, but I think you could see it, right? You could see that there might be some growth coming, even though Dorian is a little bit of an older player compared to some of the younger guys, of course. He's a pretty good player in transition, averaging 1.36 points per possession. There's some pick and roll thing there between him and Luka. They don't use it very often. The Mavs don't utilize it very often, but when it happens, there's something there. But where I see the most potential for Dorian Finney-Smith is attacking aggressive closeouts from defenders. And we saw this at times during the series against the Warriors. The fact is, right, teams just don't respect Dorian's ability to dribble. They don't respect his ability to dribble drive. They don't respect his ability to attack these uber aggressive closeouts. The same thing can be said for a lot of guys on the Mavericks, which is why the Mavericks shoot as many 3-pointers as they do. This is what they were built to do. But if Dorian can become, at least somewhat respectable, to the point where teams have to at least respect his ability to get to the rim, it can open up a ton of things offensively for a Mavs offense that's already great when Dorian Finney-Smith is on the court. The Mavs were 16.3 points per 100 possessions better offensively when Dorian Finney-Smith was on the court this past postseason. They were 14.9 points better as a whole. That's pretty insane stuff. I mean, that is pretty insane on-court value. They were 6.3 points per 100 possessions better offensively in the regular season as well. So it's not like this was some crazy small sample size thing in the playoffs. The Mavs are a better team when Dorian Finney-Smith is on the floor. And beyond numbers, there's just something about Dorian, man. There's just something. He's the heart and soul of the team. He really does have that dog in him. He's got the dog per 75 stats is off the fuck. They're out of this world. It's like he hits every single big shot he takes, and then he gets so hype afterwards, and you just feel it. The energy, it's contagious. I really do wish it was normal for us who work, you know, mundane, boring ass fucking jobs to scream like athletes in the workplace. I really think it would boost productivity across the entire world. Just finished my monthly quarterly reports. Ah!